discussion really gets hot, we might even have a rebuttal to the rebuttal. Many questions. I'm sorry. I'm trying to group them so that we can ask similar ones, combine similar ones. Does anybody have any questions before we get started? We have until 9 o'clock, and then I believe we have to be out, so we have to start closing before then. Each candidate will have, 2 minutes for your closing statement? Good. Thank you. Okay, thank you. All right, so to start things off, I've got three questions here which are similar. How well do you know the people in Ward 1 and the City of Ithaca? And what skills and local experience do you have that you believe qualify you to serve more than 6,000 residents of Ward 1? Another question just asked what unique experience you have, and another one, what experiences and skills make you the best person for the voice, be the voice of workers living in Ward 1. And I believe you start out since you spoke first. Downstairs.
Okay. So I believe the reason why I'm a real representation for Ward 1 is because, like I mentioned in my opening, I come from, I am a part of the system that does not work for our applicants. I am also the Deputy Director of the Southside Community Center, which is pretty much a hub for District 1, and a lot of residents end up relying on the center as a resource, whether that be for our community meals, childcare, or other programming. I am able to hold conversations with the constituents in my ward, and they know where to find me, which it makes, I feel like makes it a little bit more unique for me.
Thank you. I've been a 22-year resident of the City of Ithaca. I've served on Common Council. This is my 12th year on Common Council. Been active with the Democratic Party in all that time, and as a Democratic Committee member, we are hitting the streets every year petitioning and meeting our residents face to face to talk to them about the issues and the candidate. Much of the new First Ward is actually part of the original First Ward that I represented in 2011. That includes West Hill, Spencer Road, Naysville Estates, the West End, the South Titus neighborhood, which was the original First Ward in 2011. And now I've had a chance to meet the residents in the North Side and South Side communities as well. I have benefited from the endorsement of the United Auto Workers, the IBEW, and the local building trades. And I have worked closely with area unions to support our workers in engagement with city contracts.
I was remiss that I didn't introduce our timekeeper here, Carolyn, with the more all-important paddles warning the candidates about how much time they have. And our question gatherer is Susan here. Are there any more questions? We do have more seats over here, so nobody needs to stand in the doorway. Okay, sidewalks seem to be a big issue. My workplace is on Cherry Street. Many people are walking and pushing carriages in the road. When will sidewalks be ready? What do you think the city's plan should be to manage the new sidewalk infrastructure that's being built in line with the ADA? And maybe I better not add any more because that's enough for you to answer.
Well, the city has a new sidewalk plan. As you know, you all pay a sidewalk assessment fee that allows, in 5 different districts in the ward, deliberative sidewalk construction on a continuous basis. In terms of Cherry Street, the next phase of sidewalk construction is to connect all of Cecil Malone Drive to the new pedestrian bridge, which will cross the flood control channel. Many of seen that that construction is underway. It may take I believe, I'm not quite sure when that continuation of that sidewalk is to be implemented, but a good section of that sidewalk has just recently been installed with the new bridge next to Natesville Estates. And there was another question, and I don't have time to get to that one.
So, since I'm not as in the role yet, I cannot give you an update as to the Cherry Street sidewalks, but what I can ensure that as a representation of the ward and the district, I will ensure that the sidewalks are implemented on Cherry Street, because I myself, when passing through there, do see a lot of pedestrians, and, you know, I do care about the safety of my constituents. For the overall sidewalks and getting more funding, I would love for that, of course, to be a part of the Cornell negotiations, since their students are also utilizing such infrastructure like sidewalks. I do believe that one of the things that they can pay into are sidewalk services. As for being ADA accessible, I do know that there are areas in the city right now where the sidewalks are deemed ADA accessible, however, they're not truly fulfilling that requirement. So also listening to the concerns of my constituents, really investigating what sidewalks need to be improved and vocalizing that through DPW and also our common council meetings.
Thank you. Here we have crime. How would you address the presence of more guns and more street crime in our ward? What you propose doing about drug-related crime in the West End? And this was addressed to Kayla, but both candidates will have a chance to answer. You believe in defunding the police in view of the criminalization of homelessness and so on.
Okay, do I start with this one?
Oh, I guess so. You started the last one. I've lost track already.
So my answer to the response of the increase in crime, I think that increase in crime is a result of lack of resources. And I think I believe my direct response to that is allowing community organizations to do more work. One of the things mentioned was increase in drug usage. And so I believe that such programs like Home Together Tompkins will allow for those who are struggling with drug addiction, who are struggling with mental health barriers, to really get the proper treatment that they need, as well as we will be able to house these individuals and give them a central location to be. And this also takes away from the criminalization of them. I think to go off the defunding of the police, I do believe that we can reallocate our police budget so that we can serve our community to better standards, and that means mental health professionals, that means unarmed officers, and really, once again, investing into our community organizations that are already doing the work and allowing them to do it at a broader scale.
Okay.
In facing violent crime, we definitely need a fully staffed police department and supported police department. I agree that when we are addressing issues of addiction and mental health, these are not necessarily a police response that is required. We need to integrate with mental health response team, as well as the city has approved in Reimagining Public Safety, a peer co-response team that would go along with officers to assist in nonviolent incidents. I think this is the commitment to address what we have and what we are facing as a city. It's not really of the city to reallocate city funds to mental health services. Mental health services is funded by the county. And we all recognize that in order to have this fully integrated system, we need a well-staffed and well-supported police department. Because if we have police officers who are holding over from one cycle to the next, they are exhausted, they're more likely to make mistakes, and we need them to be proactive in the community.
Can we do a quick?
Yes, rebuttal.
So my rebuttal to that is I do understand that the county should contribute to such things as mental health resources, but I believe that our city is facing this as well. 1/3 of our calls could be handled with unarmed officers, and so that speaks volumes. That means 1/3 of our crimes are dealing around things of mental health and addiction, which our city does need to take responsibility for and allow for us to create a solution.
Rebuttal? No. Here's a question I can answer. I'm confused about whether there are 3 candidates or just 2. There are 2. I think these are candidates for the Democratic primary, which will be at the end of the month. And I have to remember to get my absentee ballot because I won't be in town. In some of the wards, there are 3 candidates running. So
Just for
maybe,
clarification.
yes?
For clarification, they're running for the 4-year term.
Yes.
There's another candidate running for the 2-year term.
There's not a
There are
primary.
2 candidates.
No, there's not a primary, but in terms of, that's why I think the person's confusion
Oh, okay.
is,
There are 2 candidates running for the 2-year.
you know,
Everybody clear? Except for me?
So then the candidates running for the 2-year term are not here tonight?
Yes,
yes.
But I'm not in the primary.
You're not in, oh,
Gotcha,
gotcha.
okay, gotcha, okay, good. Would you care to introduce yourself?
I'm Phoebe.
Wow. Thank you. Many homes and businesses in the city of Ithaca, especially in Ward 1 and Ward 2, may be impacted by changes to the FEMA flood zone maps. In prior maps, most city properties were in the 500-year flood zone. But with imminent changes to the maps, many downtown properties will now be in the 100-year flood zone. These changes could trigger requirements that property owners with mortgages may need to purchase flood insurance. Although the city has applied for funding that would mitigate the flood hazard, it's highly unlikely this possible mitigation work would be completed before the need for flood insurance kicks in. What are your ideas for helping homeowners and business owners manage this impending potential financial burden?
Well, in 2020, when the city conducted our flood hazard mitigation plan, I actually put aside and requested $20,000 in the 2021 budget to help the city participate in the community rating system. Unfortunately, due to staffing shortages, this is not something that the city was able to pursue. If we had started to engage in the community rating system, our planning department would have been able to implement best practices having to do with building design and zoning to reduce the rate of flood insurance. Depending on the level of participation of an area municipality, those insurance recipients could get up to 45% off of their premium. I have been urging staff to engage in the community rating system. However, again, due to staffing shortages, this is not something we've been able to do. Unfortunately, if we had started it in 2021, I think we would be farther along and our residents would have been able to see a discount.
So I was actually fortunate enough working at Southside to work with a couple Cornell classes where their main focus was the FEMA and the flood maps. And then I was able to attend their presentation as well. Within their presentation, they talked about policies that the city can implement, as well as working with community organizations to help offset these costs of homeowners and also renters, because renters will be the ones who take the brunt end of this financial burden at the end of the day. But they came up with some really great plans on building infrastructures to prevent flooding, and almost to the point that some homeowners will not even need flood insurance. And I think working with the city and Cornell could be a start of a beautiful partnership to really helping out our residents with the potential financial burdens of being in the flood zone.
Thank you. I shouldn't go back to sidewalks, but there are 3 questions about snow removal on sidewalks. After a winter storm, it's difficult and dangerous for pedestrians to get around the city, especially hard to cross streets and intersections. Ithaca's Department of Public Works is responsible for clearing the streets, but the DPW does not clear the ends of the crosswalks. The section of street adjacent to the sidewalks per often it is the DPW street plows that create the IT barriers that block the crosswalks. My question for both the candidates, should the city budget include funds for DPW to clear snow from the crosswalks to the end?
So I remember last budget season, Common Council, was negotiating a snow removal contract for $70,000, and unfortunately, it did not fit in the budget. But I believe, not to sound repetitive, this is where Cornell could come in, and with either an increase in their payment to the city, or taking on the financial burden of such contracts, we can work together to have proper snow removal for our residents. I do understand that there's residents who have difficulties with getting out and snowing, or plowing, and I don't believe such things should be left to residents. And of course, it's also working, if we can't get a contract, it's working with DPW to get more staff, because staff shortages is also a contributing factor to improper snow removal and having to get so much done and so much ground covered in such a little time.
I think this is definitely something that the city should consider. When we are looking at, our sidewalks and our infrastructure, this is an accessibility issue, this is an equity issue. There is constraints having to do with staff. One concept that has come forward, which I support, is putting money in the city budget that could hire contractors that would take responsibility for certain areas of sidewalk in various neighborhoods. And so that those individuals with their contracts would, on call, come in and remove snow and ice from the sidewalks, from the intersections, in the wintertime. That would allow us to provide the service. We would also foster small businesses and allow us to address ADA issues that could creep up when people are unable to get out into the neighborhood and the communities because of the snow and ice blocking our intersections.
All right. The jungle is in the first ward. What have you done and what is the solution? Also, I think this is the same thing, and this is addressed to Kayla, but how would you fix encampment issues on city property while suitable housing is pursued for that to be, for both of you?
There is many homeless encampments in the first ward. I think people would count up to like 5 jungles or 4 jungles that exist there. They have existed there for probably the last 100 years. This has been an ongoing problem. George and I have often advocated for outreach workers to get out of downtown and really integrate into the West End. And in recent years, we're needing to bring more attention to this. One of the issues that we do face, while I support Home Together Tompkins and its mission, is that until housing is available, people are living unsheltered, and they are vulnerable to the elements. They are vulnerable because they are targets of harassment and violence and exploitation, and they are unsafe. We need to work with the county to expedite and deliver services, while also, I think, creating safe spaces outdoors so that people can be safe and protected until the point that they are able to get into permanent housing.
And what my solution for the encampment problems is supporting such policies or initiatives like Home Together Tompkins, where Reach Medical would be going in and building over 100 housing units for those who are unhoused, and also providing other services such as mental health, just regular, primary care, all in one site. So it's pretty much a one-stop shop. They will also be having professionals who are monitoring the area, oversight, but not policing them, which means they're not being criminalized for their actions, and they're able to live out. Like I said earlier, I am a firm believer that crime is a result of lack of resources. So providing that, the encampment, the resources that they need, I do believe that there would be a decrease in crimes and the problems that people feel they're faced in the encampment.
May I respond?
Yes.
It's not a rebuttal per se. The REACH project is a wonderful project. 100 units would be great. But REACH serves more than just the Tompkins County, it serves the larger upstate New York region. And because REACH is a permanent housing solution, once those 100 units are filled, we will still have more individuals who are vulnerable coming into homelessness, and we need to address them. So even though that this is one solution, it is not the only solution, and even until that project is built, we continue to have people living unsheltered that we need to support.
Yes.
However, this is a rebuttal. Supporting programs like Tides is just policing our unhoused, and once again, why do we criminalize for lack of resource?
Thank you. What's your
I'm
opinion?
gonna respond to that.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay, go ahead.
Creating safe outdoor spaces for people to be is not criminalizing people who live unhoused. It's providing support and protection for them.
But when they wake up and are sleeping, let's say.
Sorry, how many rebuttals do we get?
We'll just give 1 minute for answering. You are doing so well that we have lots of time, so we might as well continue.
All right, I just wanna know that we have unlimited rebuttals.
Yes,
Okay.
well, I've decided, yes. Maybe not unlimited, but.
This is my last rebuttal. When they are criminalized and put into a cell because they decide that they want to sleep at a park because that is the safest spot for them to be, I don't believe that is fair. And a lot of the times they are just sleeping, and I don't understand where there is a danger to a community or anybody in the community when somebody is asleep.
No one is proposing putting anyone in a cell.
Right.
Tide supports that.
Oh,
No, no, it does
So,
not.
we'll get off that hot issue and talk about zoning.
Oh,
What's your opinion about Ithaca current zoning ordinance? If you think it should be changed, and how so? So, and I've lost track who's first.
I can go first.
Okay.
I do believe that we do need to look at the zoning that we do have in our city. A lot of multi-family zoning is, pretty much within the college town, college area. I would say geared towards student housing. So bringing multi-family zoning to, communities like the north side, south side, South Titus Flats, could definitely, one, help offset costs of, that homeowners are already experiencing with property taxes by being able to rent out properties, and also contribute to affordable housing, as well.
climate change has really compelled me to rethink zoning in the city. I think we really need to examine whether it is wise to continue to build dense housing in the 100-year and 500-year floodplain. Which speaks to my statement earlier, is that we can't solve our housing crisis in the city itself. We just don't have the space. We really start to consider moving people up to the hills and increasing and providing support there. All of our grocery stores are in the flats, all of our services are in the flats, and what will happen to the city of Ithaca if we do get the 100-year flood, and we do not have access? Half of the city can't get to a hospital or other resources. I think we need to think differently about how we plan for our future, which speaks to my desire to work with neighboring municipalities to reconsider development.
Excuse me, I should have asked this before. Can you all hear?
Yes.
Yeah, we have so many people, and, some of you are.
Electrification has already solved
Sitting
that
red.
problem of sending them to the outskirts. That's been solved.
We've already
Gentrification is pushed. We're not at council.
We've already talked about, touched on affordable housing, but here are two questions, that want specific ideas for, addressing housing affordability. And, yeah, what specific strategies do candidates have for making housing more affordable? We could talk about this all night. Yes, yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, part of our inaffordable housing has to do with our high taxes. I think it is an egregious area for the city to implement our tax abatement program for basically based on a map. If you built on this part of the map, it was 3 stories tall and $500,000 investment, you were guaranteed a 7 to 12-year tax abatement. That contributed to, I think, a lot of market rate and luxury development downtown, which does not pay for the services that we, the rest of us, have to pay for, because day one, that demands on our services have gone up. I think we need to get rid of the tax abatement program. We need to do everything we can to reduce our tax burden, and we need to expedite our planning and development processes so that when projects come forward for housing, they can get through and get built faster, because right now it's a 3 to 5 year process.
So some of my plans to combat or to help with affordable housing, I believe that first and foremost, we need to add inclusionary zoning, and have mixed incomes within our properties that are being developed. And I feel like that's one of the most direct approaches, because at the end of the day, most of these developers have now signed like a 10-year tax abatement, if I'm not wrong, it won't be taxed for the next 10 years. So implementing policies that require them to put those who are on the of lower socioeconomic classes is one thing for sure. I also do believe that the city should start investing and looking into housing trusts and land trusts, where communities or group of people can come together to buy land, and then they determine the affordability of that land. Once again, a community that stays together is what's going to get us the best results.
Okay. Here are a whole grab bag of questions. Bumpy streets need to repave 30 to 50 miles within the city. Traffic signals. Buffalo Street made one way, perhaps. And 3rd Street right turn by Aldi. Trying to visualize. Is that in the report?
Papa John's.
Like that little cutoff?
Okay. So, pick your pick. Yes.
Was there a question?
Yes.
What are the candidates' views on these subjects, is the question.
So we may come out against paving.
I believe the direct response is supporting infrastructure and finding room in our budget and reallocating and re-examining our budget to be able to support such infrastructure being fixed. And then also traffic control, I do believe, is a little bit a part of that as well. Off the top of my head, I do not have any clear solutions for traffic control, but of course working with my fellow common council members to figure out how we can implement such things and to ensure our residents' safety. Especially because we have a large community that likes to cycle, a large community that likes to walk. So ensuring their safety when they're out on the streets as well.
So the year that COVID happened, the city was slated to hire two new streets crews. And when COVID happened, we furloughed our staff, we lost a huge bunch of staff that didn't come back, and we are still rebuilding as a result of that. I definitely think that we need to go back to where we were before and hire those two new streets crews to address our paving needs. The north side roads are really quite deplorable. I was shocked to walk the neighborhood and see the conditions of the roads in north side. But I was very much committed to having those two crews come back online.
Okay. We've been talking about sidewalks and related things. This is a specific question. Walking and biking are low emission forms of transportation that promote health and social connection. What would you as a council member do to support and make easier more trips taking walking and biking instead of by car?
Well, our sidewalk program helps us fund our new sidewalk infrastructure that is going in. There is an annual plan that the community gets to comment on and participate in, which sets forward our priorities for new sidewalk development in each and every district. So I encourage everybody to be involved in that process. And having, again, new streets crews will help us make sure that it is safe to bike in our community, because of the potholes, it is absolutely treacherous for people who are going at any speed, and especially if the conditions are not ideal and you might not see a particular hole that would either pop you into the road or off your bike. It's just something that we need to address.
I agree that streets is one of the main focus to promote more cycling and walking in our community, especially along Bike Boulevard, but also working with community organizations like the Community Center of Transportation, as well as Southside and their RIBS program, to really get the community out and create a love for cycling and also getting bikes, out there, because bikes is not a very affordable thing when you go bike shopping.
Okay. Many of the candidates voiced support for the Ithaca Green New Deal that commits our community to carbon neutrality by 2030. The Green New Deal resolution adopted by Common Council completely lacks any sustained funding to achieve this goal. And here is a question. Would the candidates who support the Ithaca Green New Deal please explain in detail how they would achieve its goals?
It would be working with the new Director of Sustainability to set up their plans. However, my biggest goal when talking about the Green New Deal is making sure that our people are not completely affected by the electrification. One of the things with the Green New Deal is that they want to start in the South Side neighborhood. So once again, working at South Side, I've been a little privy to the Green New Deal. And the costs are high. We had one homeowner who is in an INHS house already check the conversion prices, and that was $15,000 for them alone. So I think the biggest part of the Green New Deal is working with organizations, working with state and federal government for funding to really make sure that these plans are sought out and that our people aren't taking on the financial burdens of the electrification of our city.
So when the city passed the Green New Deal, what we created was a program where any new construction would be energy efficient and receive a higher than New York State standard of the building code. We also have a contract with Block Power to help homeowners finance repairs and upgrades to their home. This is a program that is to incentivize people to make these changes, recognizing that they're expensive, not compelling them to do it before it is necessary. So if you have a furnace that is failing, there will be incentives to make it more affordable and accessible to replace that furnace with an electric energy efficient unit when the time is right. I don't think I don't think the city has any intention of pushing people to make changes before they are ready for it, in terms of their need, in terms of their housing, and definitely to make sure that when they choose to make these improvements, that it is cost effective and affordable for them, both at the time of construction and through their reduced energy bills and energy use.
Thank you. Here, for a change of pace, mental health services. This question is directed at Cynthia, but of course both candidates can answer. You have mentioned the need for wraparound, thank you. Wraparound mental health care. Mental health is a county responsibility. What can be done together with the county to develop and provide the services? And what are the main hurdles? No. To be overcome, I guess it's hurdles. Thank you. Did you get that?
I think so. So as you articulated, the mental health services is provided by the county. I think we all recognize, especially for the people who are living unhoused, one of the biggest things that we're seeing is that they are suffering from mental health challenges. And wraparound services is unique in the sense of recognizing that we have to treat the whole person in the circumstances that they are facing, because when you do have one struggle, a lot of things become overwhelming in terms of challenges of staying in your home, keeping your job, access to services, and how can we work with the individual to make sure that they are connected and supported in all ways. Also, it involves meeting people where they are. And one of the things that we would like to do is create safe spaces where, especially those who are living unhoused, where mental health providers can come and meet with them in protected areas, that both the service provider and the individual can be safe and supported, and know that that there's a place that they will be. A lot of individuals living unhoused will tend to move, and they're hard to continue to provide services for.
Here's a question about finance. Ithacans are. I'm sorry. trying to read questions and listen with the other ear is difficult.
So going back to my rebuttal, I do believe that as a city entity, we can work together. Working with the county might be a little difficult because of course we have to be on the same page, but working together to also promote and create a coalition around mental health services. So that's working with Tompkins County Mental Health, that's working with Family and Children's Medicine, OAR, CARS, all REACH, all these organizations doing the work to provide these services on a larger scale, and then of course partnering to get larger funding from the state and federal level so that we can fully implement and see out these plans.
Okay. All right, finance. Ithacans are generally liberal and accept high tax, big government model. But despite high taxes, Ithaca manages to run up yearly deficits, and we have a ginormous unfunded liability for retiree health benefits, 2 times higher than total yearly revenue. Our debt was recently downgraded. Interest rates are not low anymore. What do you suggest the city do to get on a sounder financial footing?
I think the quick response to that is to get help from Cornell. If they weren't considered a nonprofit, they should be paying approximately $40 million to the city in taxes, but with their pilot in place, they only pay us $1.5 million. So of course, with renegotiations on the table, asking for more can of course give us some more room in our budget. However, I've been talking to other elected officials about their brainstorms and ways to create more revenue in the city. And there was a conversation around income tax where it wouldn't affect our lower socioeconomic classes, but rather than those who are of higher socioeconomic classes. And I would love to do more research, of course, into that, figuring out how, if that statement is true, and if so, how do we really, make sure that that is a thing to help bring more revenue into our city.
Yeah, I'm gonna say at about 12, I'm gonna say 14 years ago, GIAC rules were changed that required municipalities to register their post-employment liabilities as a liability against the organization. And municipalities who have workers that they pay pension benefits to, those pensions become liabilities on our books. And as people live longer and healthier lives, of course, those liabilities grow along with the individuals that we continue to serve. That is the circumstances that we live within. I don't know that it's fair per se, but that is the basis of, I believe, this concern. When we were downgraded, I believe that we were directly downgraded as a result of the conference center project. Remember that we approved the conference center a week before an international pandemic was declared. Shortly thereafter, we were downgraded in our credit rating because there was speculation of whether or not the conference center would ever be able to repay the debt that the city is now obligated to pay for.
Here is, I must admit, I'm not familiar with the Cornell pilot issue. Does this ring a bell for you?
Payment in lieu of
Okay.
taxes.
Yeah.
All right. What legislative, help me for the next word, do you have to forward the Cornell pilot issue? And perhaps somebody could very briefly tell me what the Cornell pilot issue is.
So it's not necessarily an issue yet, but the Cornell pilot stands for payment in lieu of taxes. And like I stated before, Cornell is a nonprofit, so because of that, they're not taxed. If they were, they would be taxed $40 million. So in lieu of that, there was a former mayor about 20 years ago who withheld building permits, so on and so forth, in order to get Cornell to even start with the pilot, which they then agreed to the $1.5 million. Come June 2024, the pilot is now up for renegotiation, so this is an opportunity for the city to get more funding from Cornell. Unfortunately, we can't force Cornell to pay more because that's something that has to be done on the state legislature level. So all we can really do is ask and negotiate. Of course, there is certain playing fields that we have in order to get it. Like I said, the former mayor withheld building permits for that year until they wanted to come to the table. So also with that being said, Cornell got upset with that and blocked that as a possibility. But I do know that there are community groups organizing to figure out leverage for us.
Okay?
I don't know what the question is.
Oh, the question is that the Cornell pilot issue seems to be the key to the funds we need to solve many problems. But, would you think it's safe to say, how do we get Cornell to cough up?
Well, I think, yeah, Kayla is right, it was Ben Nichols, I think it was 1985, and honestly, look, if Cornell volunteered to pay more towards the school district taxes, which as we know is the biggest part of our tax bill, it would go a long way to making our community more affordable. If they contributed to the school district, if they contributed to the county, if they contributed to the city. It's considered a memorandum of understanding because they don't call it a pilot program because they don't pay taxes. They currently are paying $1.6 million in 2023. Of that 1.6, 945,000 is slated for fire service alone, which doesn't come anywhere near, in my view, the services that we provide to Cornell to protect their investment, to protect all of their research, all of their data, and as well as all the people who work and live there. I think they should pay more, and this has to be a negotiation.
Okay. This is directed to both the candidates. How are you going to promote multi-use buildings? For example, DeWitt Mall, which has residential and commercial, and probably other things I don't know about. And seeing that these multi-use buildings promote walkability.
Yeah, I guess it's me. So our zoning really allows for multi-use development. It's up to the developer to decide how they want to bring a project forward. If they come forward with an innovative project that doesn't fit the current zoning, we have what's called a PUD system where they can work with council to actually create new zoning for their development itself. However, going back to my opening statement having to do with infrastructure and staffing, the trick is that we need to make sure whatever development goes in, that there's the infrastructure to support it. So if there's a commercial use, believe it or not, commercial use has a higher fire service requirement than residential use. So there was a multi-use development that was being proposed for Cliff Street, but because our fire service is inadequate in the city, we cannot support retail use in that area. They had to abandon the retail use, and now they're gonna come up with another use because we don't have the adequate infrastructure to support new development. So this comes back to why we need to come back and reinvest in our city, our staff, and our infrastructure.
I agree with what Cynthia said, and I do believe that we could look at zoning a little differently and figure out where in certain areas of our city that could be switched over to multi-use. I do understand that there are shortages, and we aren't able to sustain some of the developmental projects right now. However, it's also promoting, working organizations to get more job fairs out there, so we can get more workers in our city, so that we can adequately provide services, but also working with one another to switch zonings, and also creating conversations with developers on how and ensuring our residents are actually getting use out of the developments that are going up.
Thank you. Back to housing. One of the treasures of Ward 1 is Nate's Floral Estates. What will you do to protect and support the resident of Nate's who are currently under siege from crime and people leaving trash on their lots?
So once again, it's going back to such things as Home Together Tompkins, where there's going to be units where our unhoused are housed, where there's going to be professionals who are on site, who are ensuring that those residents who are in the area are getting the resources that they need. They are being held accountable, but not policed.
while we wait for housing to be developed, we need to have a plan to support, those who are living unhoused. Many of them are in the areas around those full estates, both on city land and on railroad land. We are working together to create a policy and work with the county to have a collaborative solution in order to deliver services and assistance for individuals who are living unhoused, provide safe areas for them to be. But we also need to recognize and change our perspective, because if criminal activities and violent activities are happening, we need to investigate and hold people accountable for those activities. Being homeless should not mean being constantly subject to violence and threats and criminal activity, and we need to engage with law enforcement as appropriate to make sure that these areas are safe.
Here is a change of pace. We have a little more time. Regardless of the outcome of this election, in 5 years' time, what roles do you see for yourself in Ithaca? How do you see yourself contributing to the community? For example, as a city resident, employee, a local academic, an entrepreneur, an employer, or a volunteer, or a politician.
Can I go first? Okay. Well, I got involved in the city because I really care about infrastructure. I don't know if you guessed. I am also the chair of the Ithaca Area Wastewater Treatment Plant Board, which is owned by the City of Ithaca, Town of Dryden, Town of Ithaca as well. I have been active. I'm the chair of the Water Resources Council for Tompkins County. I've been an active member with the Cuba Lake Watershed Intermunicipal Organization. I suspect that at the end of this term, I will be spending more time in those organizations because I really do care about our water, our watershed, our natural environment, and proper stewardship of our water resources.
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, no.
Getting tired.
Regardless of the outcome of this election, in 5 years' time, what roles do you see for yourself in Ithaca?
I do still see myself as a community organizer here in Ithaca. The running for council was something that came about last year after budget season for Southside and being shot down by both the county and the city ultimately. It made me take a step back and realize that the community organizations who are doing the work, who truly care about our residents, who are showing up every day for those who are in disenfranchised communities, don't get enough credit, don't get enough respect. So that is what drove me to run for council. I would love to see myself still within the politician and political world, because I've also realized that within this world, I can make the true change and impacts that I love to make. But if not, I would love to open up my own nonprofit and geared it around our Black and Brown teens in the community. One of the programs I fell in love with while being at Southside was Black Girl Alchemy, where I'm mentoring numerous of teen girls from middle school to high school, even starting elementary school. And that's just been my passion, and I've grown to love that.
Yeah, wonderful. What is your plan to stop real estate projects marketed to the upper third of the market?
Great question. I believe it's working with my fellow common council members to implement policies and to put in place policies that will prevent high market prices. So that is such things as good cause eviction, ETPA, where we're really putting the rights and protections on the tenants, ensuring that they are getting affordable, good quality housing.
Do we stop high-end development? I definitely don't think that they should be in any way subsidized by the government. I think they need to carry their own weight, and if they want to pay the property taxes that will go along with a high-end development, more power to them. But we need a diversity of housing types in the city, where all incomes and all individuals at every stage in their life. So supporting a broad diversity of housing types, whether or not it's, single-family homes, duplexes, homes with ADUs, and others, this is what we need to, make sure that we have the opportunity to see developed in the city. And mainly, I very much want to see growing opportunities for homeownership in the city. Because right now, if we're just focusing on apartments, by definition, our homes will become more expensive because there's so few of them and demand is high. We need to increase that inventory of homes that can be owned by the people who live there.
Thank you. Unfortunately, there are some very lengthy questions here and we are running out of time. I apologize to the people whose questions I didn't get. Well, perhaps I could answer this one. There were several questions about the Ithaca gun property and
Smokestack.
the toxic hazards there.
Oh, okay.
Would the candidates please explain why Ithacans should vote for them since they failed to promise to make sure these toxic hazards are fully remediated in strict compliance with all applicable regulatory requirements? Well, you didn't both vote. I don't know how you voted, but if candidates support that commitment, please explain in detail how they propose to achieve the goal. We can spend the whole night talking about this.
Yeah. So the vote was whether or not we would spend $15,000 to assess the smokestack, and understand its condition. It was not associated with the Ithaca gun property. It had nothing to do with, the level of remediation. Basically, yes, I'm 100%, whenever at all possible, we should remove all the contaminants from the area. I don't think encapsulation is the best way to go. Unfortunately, and throughout upstate New York, and we see it here in the city, the cost of complete removal is quite high. And so a lot of the developments have met the DEC standards by encapsulating the contamination underground and building on top of it with restricted covenants in terms of how that land can be used. But in terms of the recent vote, it didn't have to do with the contamination, it had to do with the condition of the smokestack.
Okay, I guess you don't have to say.
Okay, I'm gonna say yeah.
Yes.
I have a very important question, and I'd like it answered, if it could be, because it has to do with landlords. I'm a landlord, and it was just issued to you. It's, it should,
Will landlords receive incentives if they provide?
I think that's,
Okay, all right. A
thank
quick
you.
one. Will landlords receive incentives if they provide affordable housing?
I do believe that a landlord should receive incentives for providing affordable housing. We're already doing it to developers who are building these luxury apartments and pricing a one-bedroom apartment at well over $2,000. So if landlords want to contribute to helping with the affordability and creating more of a housing stock here in our city, I don't see why we cannot meet them in the middle and make something or bring a policy about that will make it possible.
Thank you.
So the existing regulations don't really allow that. So the tax abatements for these developments are actually provided by the IDEA. It's not actually provided by the city. It's an authority granted to them by the state. The ability that we have to provide tax credits is also authority that's granted to the city by the state. There's a list of them that we can engage in and opt into. I don't believe that there is a tax credit authority that is given to us to allow that. However, for property owners who have committed to providing income-based or income-focused housing for a certain period of time and enter into a contract, I believe, with the state, they are then allowed to access tax credits from the state. In terms of what the city can do, maybe this is something that can be explored. Obviously, it would take some creative thinking to see what can be done to address it.
Well, thank you very much. So we're on to, we we have 6 minutes left for closing statements. 2 minutes each, and we do it in reverse order. And you spoke first? Yes.
I spoke first earlier.
Yes, so.
So it's my turn.
Mhm.
So I would like to start by saying thank you to GIAC for hosting, organizers, audience, and Cynthia. Before closing tonight, I want you all to take a deep breath. This week, our community and others have had to worry about breathing in dangerous toxins. These toxins are the ashes of the harm that is caused by capitalism. We are physically breathing the effects of profit over people. Our government has a history of allowing profit to dictate our policies, which in return has harmed our people. As a community organizer, I have seen our communities bring ideas and budgets to Common Council for amazing programs and services that provide food, shelter, education, care, and safety to our people. And too many times, our Common Council has denied or limited these funds. Breathe deep and ask yourselves, do we need more of the same? The time is now to come together as a community to get true grassroots representation into our government. I have lived and breathed this community since the day I was born, and I'm here to tell you, as a part of Solidarity Slate, I will go to the ends of the earth for you, Ithaca. And I will come back with laws that center our people over profit. The Slate is a common council for the people, and voting for us is voting to put our people over profit and giving our community the power that they deserve. As my co-candidate, Ms. Phoebe, said, Slate is a new style of politicking. As members of the Slate, we will listen to what our constituents are saying. We will fight for better quality of life here in Ithaca, and we will always put our people over profit. Vote for Solidarity Slate on June 27th, and take care of each other, Ithaca. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I want to thank the League of Women Voters and GIAC for hosting this forum and for allowing us the opportunity to share our ideas with the community. I also want to thank Kayla Matos for running. It takes courage and commitment to run for election, and having been through it a few times, I recognize the personal sacrifice involved. Competitive races produce better elected representatives, and too many local elections go uncontested. I have personally knocked on nearly 1,000 doors in the new First Ward, reconnecting in person with constituents on West Hill, West End, Natesville Estates, and Spencer Road, and introducing myself to the residents of the North Side, South Side, and South Oak Creek neighborhoods. As an active member of the First Ward Democratic Committee, I do this every year. This gives me a chance to see firsthand how people are doing, to build relationships with residents, ground truth proposals, plans, and projects that can move forward. Residents don't hesitate to let me know what their values and priorities are, what works and what doesn't work, which is very often different from discussion threads and social media. In my 12 years on council, I've made it my commitment to do my homework, to ask questions, and check my assumptions. Our challenges are complex, and developing meaningful solutions requires conversations where all sides can come together and be seen and heard. These can be difficult conversations. If re-elected, an important quality I bring is that I will engage with a broad diversity of views. I will take time to understand other perspectives and concerns. I will ask critical questions and will be informed as possible so that we on council can develop a solution that will have a meaningful impact on improving people's lives. I promise not to be distracted by slogans and national agendas. I remain dedicated to supporting and implementing policies and programs that serve the needs, values, and interests of our residents and our community.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Kenny. Thank you all for coming.